All right, welcome to Shop Talks. It's a production of theinkitchen.com, which is a free online repository of mostly accurate information. Thanks to Hanes and Hirsch Solutions and Impressions Magazine and Impressions the Show for having us have shop talks here. There's a whole schedule in the back. If you want to check out the next 3 days, we have a lot of interesting speakers and talks, and you can check all this out online if you go to the Ink Kitchen. I have with me Kevin Tsukahara, longtime industry veteran. I know that sounds like he roamed the earth with dinosaurs or something, but he's been doing a lot of different things and has a great perspective on a lot. And we're going to talk about just-in-time, on-demand, and mass production. Welcome, Kevin.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rick.
And he is subbing in for Jacob Edwards, who, for personal reasons, could not make it, I'm sorry to say, but I'm pretty happy to have Kevin here. So, Kevin, on demand, just in time, what's the future of it? Where are we going with it? A lot of stuff I think people call on demand is really just in time. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, we are definitely seeing a big push. On demand is whether it's not so much that everything is going that way, but that is where the growth is today, right? On demand, just in time is an interesting subset, an interesting thing to talk about, and I'm really interested in hearing Jacob's thoughts on that one in particular.
Next trade show.
Yeah, we can't wait to have him back because I'm not going to match his energy. So, with on-demand, we've seen a lot of growth there. We've seen a lot with, especially with everything going online, with more and more shopping going online. We all know, like we've talked about repeatedly, the pandemic really triggered a lot of this and really accelerated everybody's move to online shopping. And because of that, we find ourselves in some interesting situations, especially when it comes to the supply chain and the appeal, the allure of on demand, especially, is having that as small as possible, having your inventory expenses as low as they can possibly be. Just in time is another kind of extension of that. If you think of that, if we want to have minimal inventory, we want to have minimal waste, which of course leads us to lean manufacturing principles in general. And it's one of those things that everybody talks about. We all know it's a good idea, like eating vegetables, but with lean, with just in time,
not such a good idea when you don't have the blanks, right? Not such a good idea.
Assuming they can be produced.
When you can't hire enough people to print them on demand, right? Maybe not such a good idea sometimes, huh?
It has its...
What are the challenges?
It has its challenges, right? It's a lot harder to manage, and we need to be upfront about that. If we're talking just in time, if we're talking on demand, it is a lot more to manage. Batch manufacturing is easier.
I know, people forget that, right?
Yep.
If it's already on the shelf, it's a lot easier to fulfill than making it, right?
Right. You can optimize a lot of things, get your unit costs really low. The real question, and this is what's kind of been changing things, is people's buying habits. Are people buying the batches? How much inventory is sitting on your shelves, and how long is it sitting there is really the big one, and that's what a lot of us struggle with, especially early on.
I mean, I guess it used to be, all right, you want a Michael Jordan shirt? You got a Michael Jordan shirt, and that's the Michael Jordan shirt. And if you want one, you get it. People aren't really satisfied with that, right? Now they want some variation that their buddy does not have, right?
Well, that's exactly right. And when you go with on demand, when you start producing on demand, you realize that your customers change as well. Let me back up a little.
Okay.
Especially for screen printers. When you have a manual press, you learn how to use it, you get better and better, your quality's getting there, your customers are getting there, and maybe you add another manual press, maybe you add an auto. And we all struggle with that big step to buy an automatic screen press And but once you do, you never look back, right? All of a sudden, you start getting much bigger orders than you thought you'd get before, right? It's all of a sudden you're able to produce it. People want it. Your prices get better. Your costs get better.
Your wrists stop hurting. Right?
Your problems don't go away, but yeah, your wrists and back don't hurt quite as much. The same thing when you really embrace on demand, all of a sudden, you don't have that investment for a design, right? If you're not buying a full batch of a design, if you're not setting up the press, for oftentimes over an hour to produce that one design, how many more designs could there be, right? Then it kind of becomes endless. And so now the people that are doing the designing are going to flood you with even more.
It's funny, though. Jacob tells a story, actually,
Yeah.
of how, with that turned on its head, I mean, he had a license. He was printing for a licensed property, and they did 33 designs. And
Yep.
in the old days, that would have been $150,000 investment in inventory.
Yep.
So it was all on demand or just in time.
Mm-hmm.
3 of them sold like insanely, and the rest did crappy to crappier. And so they started screen printing the 3. And so it gives you a trial basis as well.
Great
But you
way to
need
test the waters.
Right? And if you have a facility with all of that, that's probably the best thing of all, right?
I think it was Nick was talking earlier when speaking about transfers, and you're exactly right. There's a lot of value in producing in batches. There's a lot of value in producing one-off, on demand.
Right.
And every single method we have is a different tool that you can use. And number one, when saying, well, which is better, the first thing I would ask is, tell me about your customer. What does your customer want? What are they ordering? Are all your customers ordering your minimum quantities? Tells me that maybe they want smaller.
The better one is the one that you sold.
Yes, the one that pays.
Yeah, maybe not in the art world. I think we've all done projects that have nothing to do with money. But in terms of business, like if it sells, right, people don't really care how you got it on a shirt or when you got it on a shirt, right?
Exactly.
I don't care if it was 2 months ago or 5 minutes ago. So it's really more about increasingly the decorator holds the keys to how it's going to be produced, and the end user doesn't care anymore how it was produced.
Absolutely. There are always going to be those that care. There are going to be those that say, they can see the difference, the tangible benefits of a screen print or a DTG print or a transfer or CAD cut vinyl.
For the first time ever I heard this week, you'll like this.
Yeah.
Somebody was like, could you screen print this? Because all the hybrid printing that we can get is already spoken for. So they wanted 1,200 full color things, and they knew that we old school could separate it and screen print it.
I was just having a discussion about that, right? About
that's a new one for me.
That if you build out that matrix of your costs, at what point where do you make that transition from digital being the most cost effective versus screen print?
I know
right?
every facility's different, but I know you did a lot of analysis of that in one of your jobs, and I remember kind of, how disappointed you were really that your initial calculations were wrong, right? Where you thought you could screen print most effectively down to maybe it was 48 shirts or something in that one place you were at, and it was really a much higher number that you ended up digitally printing, right?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that a little bit, because I think that's kind of an interesting story.
Yeah. First off, we're only any analysis you do, we're only as good as the data we start with, right? And a lot of times we're only as good as the assumptions we make. And when we start with an assumption of how long does it take me to set up a press, it's that changeover, right? How do we get that down? And the amount of time it takes me to set up a 1-color is a lot different than the time it takes me to set up a 6-color design. It's that skill. It's that required skill. It is having people that care, that put in the work, that want to produce something really good. And there are a lot of screen print shops that have that mentality. And a lot of them are involved with the Ink Kitchen and are following the Ink Kitchen. And it's a huge difference. And that's not really what we're talking about when we're talking about the customers for a lot of online things, a lot of the digital,
Right.
a lot of the what's the word? The real topical kinds of designs.
Right. But where's that break point? Like, where's the sliding scale go for digital?
Yeah, for digital.
And now it's even more complicated with hybrid and screen printing. Where's
Right.
that number, do you think, most of the time? Where's the slider go, at least,
Yeah.
for when you should just digitally print it versus screen print it?
Yeah. We found the batch sizes the sizes get a little bit bigger. If we're talking about a batch of a single design, whether we should set up the screens or not.
Right.
And I believe it was at 6 colors. We need to be at, I believe it was 64 units is where it makes sense for us to screen print
Right.
at 6 colors. But at 8, it jumps up quite a bit.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on your equipment, your operators, et cetera. But the
Equipment and operators.
But real world, I just wondered where that was. And I think
Yeah.
initially you had thought it would be closer to 40 in that one application, right?
It was for a 6 color. We initially had that at about 47 units, I believe. It was a long
people
time
got
ago.
into the equation, right?
Exactly. Our sample size was not large enough, right?
Right. Do you see that changing at all?
Yes, with screen print. Let's talk about that for a moment because there's so much work being done I'm looking at the presses that we've got here now and how much work is going into...
Or something like a laser,
Yeah.
right? Cuts out a whole step, right, for making your screens?
Yes. We talk a lot about registering those screens, but one of the biggest advantages we had years ago when I first dipped my toe into the e-commerce and on-demand side, we had 12 presses at the time just to start this building out. And but what we found is the number one most important thing is consistent placement of the image on that screen. If we were perfect every time, the setups, of course, could get a lot faster.
Right.
And got so much faster to the point we were actually able to pre-ink screens, have them set up with, everything. If you've ever studied something like SMED, when we talk about that single-minute exchange of die, when we talk about minimizing your changeover times as much as possible, that was really what we drilled down on. We never got the people faster at getting everything registered, per se, but we did get...
That's because screen printers all smoke. So when they're done with one job, they have to go outside. You want it to be like a race car, right? It should be
Exactly.
like a pit crew. It comes in and the
Exactly.
tires are off before you hardly can announce who is in the pit, right? But no, it's human nature is a little bit wants to stop when you finish something, right?
It is, yeah. We've all got our own personal agendas. We all have different values.
Or text your girlfriend, whatever it is, boyfriend, etc.
All I know is you're better off doing that while the press is running so that we can measure
Right.
the impact.
So at this point, where are things going? Like what's holding things back? At a certain point, when you're screen printing, if you make your screens faster, then your art department can't keep up. If you get your art department and screens up, then suddenly your operators can't go. What in the big picture is holding things up at this point?
For screen printing in particular.
No, let's say for
Or
mass
just-
production for people that do online stores.
Okay.
What's where's the next bang for your buck going to come in that? Is it the garment,
Yeah.
input? Is it the software that puts it all together? Where are the developments happening? Where do they need to happen?
Yeah.
dream a little bit and
Yeah.
where are we at, what's frustrating, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, so let's talk about the fun part of this first, and then I'm going to give you a less interesting answer.
I can't wait.
I want to end on a low note. So
We'll have milk and cookies and we'll take a nap.
exactly.
Oh, no, we have beer at 4.
It's been a long day. No, software is going to be one of the biggest. When you look at the companies that are entering the market,
Right.
when you look at the people pushing solutions, there are a lot of amazing software solutions out there. None of them fit your shop perfectly, my shop perfectly, your shop perfectly, right? Nothing's going to be perfect. And especially with our industry, with where we are, it's this DIY mentality. We all built it ourselves, right? So a lot of times I think there's a lot more resistance. There's a lot fewer standards in our industry.
I built
Then-
my first exposure unit with a 150 watt bulb and a pie plate. Doesn't mean it was a really good idea.
But you did it.
I did do it.
We can't help ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times the initial reaction to software, to a software package, no matter how good it looks and how much it would improve things, we're still hit with, but I don't want to change my shop. Develop better software. But really, we need to, and without standards in place, software is going to be probably the biggest opportunity to allow us to trim as much fat as we can from our processes, for us to have the most insight into how our business is running.
It's kind of interesting. So it might not
yeah.
even be the cost of the software. It's how much you're willing to change your processes to fit with the software.
Yeah.
Whoa. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
You told me it wasn't going to be, but it is.
Yeah. No. That's the interesting one.
All right.
Here's the boring answer.
right.
What's really going to make the biggest difference for on-demand, for everybody? More consistent substrates.
Maybe RF chips in the shirts too, huh?
Well, that would be nice.
I think that's on the horizon, perhaps. Privacy concerns be damned, I guess, huh?
It's in the cards for a lot. RFID, gets a lot of press. I think NFC is probably makes a little more sense, but everybody's doing it with good old-fashioned barcodes still when it comes to that on-demand.
I mean, I was in a big shop that
Yeah.
was doing all on demand, and that seemed like the bottleneck to me. The garments coming in and then, looked a little bit like Keystone Cops or something, fire drill of, putting barcodes on blank shirts.
Putting those barcodes
From that point,
on.
the whole process was pretty automated,
Mhm.
from what design was drawn down to the decorating machine,
Yep.
to what envelope to put it in,
Yep.
and all that. But that seemed like the weak link. Do you think the garment companies are going anywhere on that? Or, like,
Yeah.
how's that bottleneck going to get filled?
That's what I would love to know. We really need to. I can't speak for them.
I'm not wrong. That
right.
is like a place that slows the whole process
It's a huge
down.
opportunity, right? For the barcodes to be there, for us to not have to place them, for anybody to not have to place them. The problem is, what universal standard should be used? What universal standard is going to be used that can be used in my shop and your shop and his shop?
And then
So-
the better one, the beta tapes are going to be better, but everyone's going to go with VHS, right?
Exactly. We always have these format wars, don't we?
Right.
In so many areas.
All right. You said you were going to tell a boring story.
No. What I was saying was boring is more consistent fabrics. That's
okay.
really where we want to be.
Do you think that's possible?
Well, I know it's possible. I don't know that it's very realistic, given the supply chain constraints for every apparel vendor.
I mean, I know, I don't mind giving them credit. Sanmar, for example, really cares about how their things
Yep.
are decorated. On the whole, most of the manufacturers do not at all. It's like shocking. I mean, we printed on things that when they first come out, like every single one scorches. Like no one ever tested it. Like, this is a great fabric. It feels really good, but you can't print it. So that from that to like something that goes through the system quickly just seems like is it ever going to really happen?
Well, so now you're getting into something really interesting with And that's why I'm so excited about projects like Made Labs, where there's going to be some testing. There's going to be some standards coming. That's where I want to see things like that go. And when you talk about getting your shirts in from whatever mill, from whatever factory, from whatever manufacturer, and then they scorch. Or you get dye migration on some 100% cotton shirts that the last batch printed just fine. Now, why is that? You can go through, and those are oftentimes, almost always, made to spec. But there's something else. There's a variable we're not controlling. There's a variable that I haven't identified, right? Or that, that we don't know what it is. A lot of it's above
our pay grade, right? I mean, you can make a dye that's cumin, garment dye, but you can make that dye in a couple of ways, and we're never going to have access to that information. So we can't link the inks with the printing of those shirts if we don't know how the dye was made.
Right.
We never are privy to that information.
Right. The important thing is that the examples you had used, it's companies that do know, right? I think there are a lot of manufacturers. There are some that don't. And that's really what we need to be controlling.
Right. Do you think that information's coming? Do you think they're going to start caring more? Do you think that's on the horizon?
I sure hope so.
Right.
Transparency is crucial.
I mean, I do know, for example, pretty much every mill I've talked to on some level is working on a pre-treated shirt, that will take digital inks, right? That's going to come eventually, right?
That is exciting. That is going to remove a huge blocker for a lot of shops.
If it really happens. 95% of the way is not all the way.
Exactly.
Remember, I won't name them, but one company every time had a loading machine that would work, and they were, it was going to be ready in 6 months. Mm-hmm. I think that was about 22 years ago I first saw that machine. If it's never done, it's not. If they knew when it was going to get done, it would be done, I would guess.
Automatic loading, it's one of those holy grails. It's always going to be just over the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've heard some people with things out of the box where some kind of shirt that's flat or something and sewn later, that kind of thing, but not shirts as we know them right now. Right.
Is it going to be something that people are going to want to wear? There's a lot that we could do. T-shirts are not really great for handling.
Or printing.
Exactly.
No, right. I mean, honestly, someone asked earlier today about why are so many printers going out of business? Why is there a shortage of decorators? And one reason is it's harder to print shirts now, right? Everything that makes a shirt really nice is usually what makes it hard to print, right? That nice, cushy, suede shirt or something is a nightmare to print, right?
Yep. When we're talking about that nap on the fabric, when we're talking about that texture, when we're trying to mat down those fibers, the softest, most sheer fabrics are not the best for that. Those softest, most sheer fabrics are also the ones that tend to scorch.
Right.
So
I mean, it's funny how some of this stuff is at cross purposes. On one level, it seems like there is an increase in knowledge in the art world. If you design for a shirt like that, it's easier to print. If I'm just given some. On the other hand, people are wanting to design their own things and they don't have the right parameters, perhaps. So, you do a billboard and you want it on a suede shirt, it's going to be awful, feel awful, look awful, be awful to print. Whereas if you designed it with a very minimal ink coverage, it would be a lot easier to print. So you have cross purposes here for sure.
Absolutely. With especially speaking of designers, right? That is that's one of the most important things when I used to go to print shops quite a bit when helping with problems. Most of what we would do, most of the real fix would go back to either the screen room or the art, right? With the right art, we're just walking around this show. You'll see, I saw a design, I think, 9 screens with a single flash. That's the kind of thing, you really want to see if you know how to design for the process.
It has to be engineered properly, really.
There's nothing more important, and that's why, we try to, I am a very big proponent. What I used to speak a lot about was more empowerment for your art department, for screen printing. the more involved your art department is in the process, the more they know. The art department ideally should be dictating print sequence, mesh counts. As much of those decisions as possible should be made in the art room. And which means I think a lot of very experienced press operators might get upset by that comment. And I want to make it very clear, those press operators should also spend more time in the art room. They know more about what should be done. Art department and those lead press operators, the best people, should be working together to make sure that everything is optimized so we don't have to reburn screens after the fact.
So let's go back to the original topic a little bit. So
what was that topic?
It's about mass production and just in time and on demand.
Yeah.
So for what are we going to see in the future here, near and far future, for large facilities that are mailing out single orders of multiple designs? How is that going to happen? What are those factories going to look like in a year? What are they going to look like in 5 years? What are you seeing out there? What are people talking about?
We're going to see those shops going in two directions. The ones that go small and cellular and lean, and then the ones that are going with a lot of the bigger, faster equipment that we're seeing.
And what kind of equipment's that going to be, do you think? Like, what types of things are we going to see?
So some that are really exciting are going to be the what do we have coming up? We've got the M&R's got their Polaris. Kornit's got some new machines coming out. 240 Tech with the Oval Jet. Brother and Epson both have more industrial machines coming out. We've seen so much development, so many new things that are happening here, and they all have some very, very strong use cases for all of these improvements.
You know, it's funny, on the small scale basis, a lot of people are going to transfers. And big facilities, do they do any of that? Like, and you hearing anything about that?
Not that I've seen.
It seems funny that they don't, right? It seems like it would be something that could plug in.
It seems there's a lot going on, and it seems like there's been so much development in that space lately that I think we may see more of that.
They're just not caught up or something?
It's so new. There's so many developments in transfers today that I wasn't expecting.
Right. And then, I guess, do you see it seems like a lot of the things are bifurcated. You know, you got the garment company, and you got the production equipment company, and you got the materials, and you got the software for mailing. Like, do any of these people talk together, or are we the only glue for that? You know, it doesn't seem like they talk that much. Too much worry about competition, or too much worry about pissing some other equipment company off if you make your shirts just for one, that type of thing.
Intellectual property is a big topic, right? And it's something we all care about, especially with something that is growing like apparel decoration is. So, I would like to see a lot more collaboration.
So in different places you've worked and stuff, do you see do those barriers ever come down? Do you get people working for a common sort of solution, if you will?
I think that's really going to be driven by the larger shops that have that volume, that are forcing those changes and bringing us into the future.
I've seen a little bit. Actually, Tom from the In Kitchen was saying today that, you know, we could take a little credit. I think we're like trying to foster more cooperation in general. It's like most of us don't compete really. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if things ran more smoothly, it would be better for everyone. You know, I see a little bit more. I know Saudi got their machine to work with MHM presses, you know, for the laser, that kind of thing. You know, you see a little bit more cooperation going out there.
Yes.
You see the digital squeegee, actually, I believe he's, they're selling it to other press companies, even.
I hadn't heard.
For cooperation.
See, now that's what I love to see.
Right?
We want to see more of that collaboration. We want to see, there's so many ideas, and there's so much happening all at once, that we want to see more working together. That's why I love what In Kitchen's doing. I believe that that knowledge should be shared as much as it can be, and I like seeing everybody come together, opening up their shops, like what's happening on your site.
It's funny you say that.
Yeah.
Any screen printers I know, or embroiderers, anyone, they can't train people, they can't attract people. So I think there's also a place for the industry to start helping with that. You know what I mean? We're not all curriculum developers. We're not all married to them. So, so I think there's really a place for some of that also, right?
Training is invaluable. Investing in our people, bringing someone in, giving them these skills, showing them how to use it, it pays for itself in huge ways. There's this old, there's that older mentality. If I'm a press operator and if I teach someone else, then I'm less valuable, right? And that's the mindset we really need to get away from. We should all be sharing our secrets as much as we can. I think that's a great way to be. That's why I love seeing this, seeing what you guys have been doing. So,
all right. Do we have any questions about on demand, just in time, mass production, anything you want, life?
No.
Free advice here, free information. Kevin and I have done a few things. So the question is about garments consistency. Is it things like sizing? You mean sizing like you apply to the shirt, or size of the shirt? We're talking about, yes. So the question is, are you talking about dyes and other aspects of the shirt? What are you talking about in terms of garment consistency?
No, specifically the dyeing process, the washing process, the sizings, the finishings, everything that's done to that fabric before it's cut and sewn, the washes, the any of those treatments. It's those kinds of things that we really need to standardize. That we want the mills to standardize, at least for their own product.
We recently printed some shirts that were garment dyed, and I could just tell from the labels there were 4 different processes of either over dyeing or dyeing that happened, because the label looked, one was white, one was like tan, one was like light blue, and one was dark blue. We got different results with the discharge ink we were using, and that's because of utter and absolute lack of consistency in the dyeing. And then I think it also, you mentioned the sizing. I think as not what we're talking about. I would talk about that as well. Try to load what's straight. Tell me what's straight on a T-shirt.
Right.
You can't use the label. You can't use the shoulder. What is it? The shoulders, the neck, the bottom, the side seams. What is it? A human being sewed it.
Right.
And,
to be devil's advocate,
it wasn't probably
though.
paid well enough. But there's not much, and then our human beings loading it still. Mm-hmm. And even when they're loading it, and we have lasers in our place, for example, and there's lasers for digital printers, et cetera. But even with all that, it's very hard to get it straight. And then what is straight? I mean, I'm working with some people on coming up with some of those standards even. What's acceptable,
That is a great question. How do we quantify those things? And it goes back to the initial, to one of our earlier points, right? That there are no real standards in apparel decoration, right?
No standards, and not too many standards in their manufacturer. Like, how consistent does the dye have to be? I mean, we're counting on trust in some ways. I can't, none of us in a decoration facility, except maybe the very hugest ones, would be able to tell if one is a little thicker than another, right? We're still with a primitive thing, must be from the Middle Ages, about the weight of a shirt, right? Have you ever seen that? I don't know if any of you have seen it. The weight of a 6.1 ounce shirt, the place has a thing that chops a hole in the shirt, and you have a piece of it and you weigh it, and that's the weight of the shirt. I mean, it's really not high tech. It's pretty bad. And what about the thickness of the shirt, right?
Right.
The sizes, size scale, you know, if you complain, they'll say, well, it's within standards. Like, who made that standard? Like, you just made it up, maybe. You know, it's an inch and a half
Yeah.
longer, or what have you, right? You're trying to do all these things and automate your processes,
Yep.
but we still do have that very sticky situation of a garment in the middle there, huh?
Well, exactly. The problem, we can't, if we're going to have a discussion about quality and standards and holding any product to certain standards, we also have to have a discussion about price point. And that's the rub. Because we're all kind of, we have a number in our head, a pretty good idea of what we're willing to pay for a T-shirt. And how much more precision do we need? And how much more precision are we willing to pay for?
Right. I think, though, that's kind of interesting because as people more directly sell to the end user online, see prices actually go up more because, you know, there was a middle person before that always had to jack it up. So contract printer and a shirt, they don't want to pay, somebody doesn't want to pay $2 for a shirt and they don't want to pay me $1 to print it, but when you give them a whole package that's $7.50, and especially if they're going to sell it online for $25, they'll pay you $7.50. You know what I mean? It's a perception there that has changed in a way, and also the economics have changed by how it's delivered.
Yep, and that's going to be driven by our customers. What they're willing to pay, what they expect for a delivery time, what they expect for quality.
All right, other questions? The question is, do we think on-demand is what? The future of print, like in general. Like going to overtake all printing, perhaps, you think?
It is a big part of the future, but no, it's not the entire future. The entire world isn't shifting to on-demand. Yeah, there's always going to be, there's so much use for mass production, batch production. Screen printing is not going away. DTG is not going away. Heat transfers aren't going away. Embroidery is not going away.
And actually, people talk about online sales, but it's not even half, right?
I can't speak to that. I don't know.
You don't know?
Yeah.
I believe it's not even half. So, it's sexier and more interesting, and it's the direction, but it's not the whole thing. People are still going to want to feel a shirt. That's pretty hard to convey on a computer screen at the moment, although I would guess maybe that even would change. But for now, anyway, right?
Absolutely. People are still going to want to go into stores. People are still going to want to see certain things before they buy them. We're going to keep having events where we'll want to commemorate those with a T-shirt.
That's funny you say that because, you know, like, look at music, right? Vinyl's coming back, right? A lot of times now they sell, not so they will sell more shirts, but a lot of events have print your own shirt, you know, as an attraction to make the experience of the event more interesting, not to sell more shirts, or not as the only way you can produce those shirts. It's an experience. I know a guy that had made stores where you design your shirt and it's made right there for you, and he totally morphed into, instead he sells that experience, like when say a brand is opening a new store in New York City, they'll have that as an experience to attract people to the store, not as a way to make things.
Yeah, those screen print exhibitions, people eat it up. I love them.
Atlantic City, unfortunately we didn't do it here, but we were printing posters by hand. Fascinating. Still magic, you know? Still kind of magic. And
Yeah.
right?
Love screen printed posters, right up there with vinyl.
Yeah, right. Other questions? Did I answer your question? Cool. All right. Other questions? So the question is about advice for art department for speeding up the whole process. Yeah?
Speeding up the process
Was that it?
in the art department?
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a very fun topic that we might want to discuss in a little more depth after this. But high level, let's start with the fact that, yeah, you can do it through standardization. And what does that mean, right? If I assume we're talking screen print, and if we're talking screen print, we're talking primarily color separations. There are a lot of things you can do that kind of depend on your customer, but an example would be limiting the file types that you accept is going to be a good starting point, so that there's less pre-processing work involved before you can start color separating. And tell me this, is there a particular step that you find to be a bottleneck in your art department? Is it the color separations? Is it getting the file to begin with? Is it getting customer approval? Doing the separations? Okay. It's easy to point to software on something like that, so we can start there. Most of the software doesn't do the entire job for you, but there's a lot we can do with. We set up an art department where we had to hire. We needed 8 artists and had 30 days to train them, with 0 experience in color separations. Right, so partnered with a RIP company. We worked with a few companies on building out a screen department to standardize this process, to get good direct-to-screen machines that would give us the kind of consistency that we wanted at the time. And from there, a simple thing, we said everything has to be vector artwork. Vector artwork, spot color, no gradients. So when you start there, that gives us a lot to go on. And we were able to train these color separators. We got the team up to speed in about, most of them were up to speed in 30 days, color separating 2 to 3 jobs an hour with an average screen count of 3.5. And that was simply because we wrote some scripts specifically for Illustrator for vector designs and standardized our color palette. So standardizing your color palette
standardizing color palette helps.
It's huge.
It depends on what kind of customers you have, but yeah.
It depends on your customers.
Mine won't go for it. The other is I've given this advice before. I think it's still good, actually. If you go in a place and the art department has a rug, that's a bad sign. And if you go in the screen room and it's go into the printing facility and it's really dirty, it's a bad sign. Because the artist will not go out to the see how things are actually done if it's too dirty. And the printers can't go into the art department if they have ink on their shoes. So the rug is a bad sign sometimes. So what I'm getting at, though, is basically your artists need to understand printing, and your printers need to understand where the art department is coming from. And when you don't communicate, that's, in marriage, screen printing, whatever, it's usually a bad thing.
And we need to be upfront there's a cost to that, right? There's a cost to that cross-training. You need to take some people off task to have them learn that, but it pays for itself in a huge way.
I was at a place, now closed, maybe that tells you something, and they had 30 artists, and they were maybe 20 miles from the main production facility, and the production facility told me that 2 people of that department had ever been to the production facility.
Oh,
and they're closed now. That tells you something. Didn't go very well. They were very inefficient, and they produced a lot of art that was unprintable, in my estimation. So
yeah,
that kind of answer your question? Okay. Other questions? All right. Kevin Tsukahara, thank you. How about a hand?
Thanks a lot, Rick.
All right. I want to thank Impressions, who makes this possible. Hanes, Hirsch Solutions, and there's a whole list of other topics. And there is free beer at 4 o'clock, right? All right. Thank you.